guys, it's Lord Botha here with another video, and Dragon Age Veilguard is a surprising success. I think. Maybe. Let's take a look. This comes to us from Forbes via our resident shill Paul Tassi. Dragon Age the Veilguard sets EA BioWare player count records on Steam. Dragon Age the Veilguard is a hit after largely positive reviews that appears to have translated into sales and player count that has broken records on PC. A, that's a very quick point to jump to, and B, it's very telling that he's giving himself and others like him a pat on the back for being the reason why this game did so well with reviews. The game has now beaten 2023's Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which peaked at 67,000 players a year and a half ago. Dragon Age Veilguard hit 70,000 players and is currently the best-selling game on Steam, surpassing even Call of Duty Black Ops. One, it's actually better in terms of the player numbers now. It's like 75,000. We'll take a look here in just a sec. And two, no, it's not beating Black Ops anymore. In fact, Veilguard fell out of the top 15 at the end of the day yesterday. It has since clawed its way back into the, I think, top 10, but it's still not as high as it was. Console numbers are less trackable, but it was the number one pre-ordered game on PS5 ahead of launch, and currently it sits number 5 on the most played chart, the only single player game on that list. Xbox charts lag behind enough where we don't have any meaningful data from that platform yet. Dragon Age Veilguard is a hugely important title for BioWare, not just a return to the series after a decade on ice, but also an attempt to get past the negativity surrounding its last two major releases, Mass Effect Andromeda and the cautionary tale Anthem. I will say that this is an important kind of piece of information here. It has been essentially a decade since a Dragon Age game came out. We've heard all the complaints about Dragon Age Veilguard being woke, and we've all seen the videos basically confirming it. I mean, there's a video in which there's a scene in the game where Isabella gives a 3-minute lecture about affirming gender identity. So yeah, the game is woke. However, there was a studio that took a long time between producing games, and when they did return with a really woke game, Outer Worlds, Obsidian did see success with that game. Mostly because everybody knew who it was. They knew they were affiliated with smash hits like Fallout New Vegas, which is considered to be arguably the best Fallout game ever produced, as well as the legendary Knights of the Old Republic. So people were curious as to what they could offer in terms of a new IP. Now, like I said, that game was extremely woke, but the people who did play it seemed to have enjoyed it, and it did do fairly well financially from what I remember. Despite the fact that I played it, and quite honestly, I didn't really see what was so great about it. It was one of those games where I kept waiting for it to get good, and it just never did. But Dragon Age could be experiencing that kind of phenomena. There's been such a long break between games that people are just hungry for that content of the former games that they used to love. So yeah, they're gonna pick up whatever Dragon Age game gets dropped. Of course, we don't know what EA's expectations were for the game, nor do we have official sales numbers from the company yet. After years and years of development, several apparent reworks, and no doubt a huge budget, it must get past the AAA problem of big sales, sometimes leading to slim profits depending on the ultimate cost. This is another thing to consider. This game is rumored to have, conservatively, a $200 million budget. It took them a decade to make. They completely reworked the game and what it seems like created a completely different game. A ton of the staff that were working on the original game, Dreadwolf, apparently left and it was handed to an entirely different team, which gave us this Veilguard mess, if I'm being quite honest. So yeah, that large budget factor is going to play in here. And that's not even considering the marketing budget, which I feel like there was a fair amount of marketing for this game. Definitely more marketing than any other Dragon Age game that I can remember. And again, that's also not taking into account that BioWare was giving away free copies of this game with the purchase of graphics cards from Nvidia. Which is why when people bring up the Steam charts, I have questions. Yes, it's nearly 76,000 players at peak and right now. But how many of those players are actually paid customers that bought the game? How many got free copies with the purchase of an Nvidia graphics card? How many of those players are actually playing the full accessible game through EA Play Pro, which is available through Steam? It's EA's subscription play service, so you can have access to their full library of games. And they haven't actually bought the game, they're just playing it through the Pro service. And keep in mind, a conservative estimate of around a $200 million budget at 75,000 players all-time peak on Steam, even if you factor in the console players, which are usually less than the PC players, but let's say they're even 2-3 times that. Are we really hitting the sales numbers that are going to make up that initial budget, let alone the marketing costs on top of that? Now maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm coping, sure, and that's a fine argument to make against me. But when you take Veilguard's numbers and you compare them to something like this, Monster Hunter Wilds Beta, which also released today, and it's also an action RPG, you can see the breadth and width of the gap between a truly successful series and one that seems to have a lot of asterisks put on it. Because saying this is the best performing game in terms of player count for EA on Steam ever is a bit like when they come up with new statistics to try to prove that LeBron is better than Michael Jordan. But yeah, if some people want to take this small amount of non-instant failure and use it to post online to own the chuds, sure, go right ahead. But I feel like in the long term, this game, especially when sales data comes out about it, again, in the long term, isn't going to be as quite successful as you think. But those are just my thoughts on all this. If you have your own thoughts, go ahead and leave them in the comments. If you liked this video, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like this video, I appreciate you watching all of it. We'll talk to you again later.